Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We'll get started with our program in just a moment. Good morning, and if you're just joining us, thanks for coming to our webinar today. We'll be started in just one moment. And good morning, everyone. And again, thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Very excited to have you as we discuss the future of work, brought to you by our Technology Council. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. All of our programming throughout the pandemic has been brought to you by Connecticut Natural Gas, Southern Connecticut Gas, and UI, part of the Avangrid family. We really appreciate their support. Also, our streaming partners that we work with, Madison Chamber of Commerce, Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce, Central Connecticut Chambers of Commerce, the Bridgeport Regional Business Council, and the Milford Regional Chamber of Commerce. We also want to thank all of our investors in the chamber. The names of the companies that you're seeing on your screen have been with us throughout this entire pandemic. They're with us in good years, but also in the bad, and that has helped us be able to continue to provide programming, stay fully staffed, and do things to support the business community as we continue to move on through this definitely very challenging time for so many of our businesses. As I mentioned, this program today is brought to you by our Technology Council, and that is presented by Comcast Business. Technology Council meets once a month. They provide great programming for our webinars, also for our councils and conversation. If you're interested in getting involved in the council, you can reach out to me or Glenn Archer or Glenn McDermott, who is the chair of the council. So some great opportunities to get more involved with the chamber. Now I'd like to introduce John Setti. He's the Senior Sales Manager for Comcast Business Western New England region. And John's going to get us kicked off this morning. John, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Garrett. Good morning, Technology Council. Fantastic. Once again, Comcast Business, very proud to be the presenting sponsor and be involved with the Technology Council going on 6 years now. It's a good fit for us. It's a great council, and very excited that, having this seminar today. Technology it's really what has allowed us to continue to remain productive over these, crazy, I think we're going on, 7 or 8 months now. Us at Comcast Business and Comcast as a company as a whole across the country, we actually were just notified that we will not expect to be going back to an office environment until June. So initially we were going to look at it again in January, but 120,000 employees are now work from home, and we will be that way with my dog in the background. Sorry about that. Until June 1st, we're going to look at it again. So, I'm sure a lot of you, it's the same situation. But the great news is we are making accommodations, and Comcast, especially, we very fortunate. We continue to invest in our network, which continues to provide steady, fast internet for work as well as people from a work from home environment. It's allowed us to continue to add enhancements that are helping businesses stay connected. We appreciate everybody that is a customer of ours. We take it very seriously. We continue to do everything we could to keep the network robust, keep everybody connected. And, also very thankful for the chamber that, we continue to partner with, and hope that everybody continues to be successful and stays healthy, both their business and personally. So Garrett, thank you very much. Appreciate the time to speak. And for anybody out there that has any questions with regards to Comcast Business, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I could certainly point you in the right direction, even if I can't help you myself. Thanks again.
Thanks, John. We appreciate it. And I was just mentioning to John, we just recently upgraded our service at the chamber, and because we play a lot of videos when we do these events, and just really, we saw such a difference. The internet was fast before, but when you're playing video, and just makes it so smooth to be able to do that over Zoom. So we appreciate the partnership that we have with Comcast Business. Now I want to introduce Glenn McDermott, who's going to take us through our panelists that we have with us today: Jason Goldfarb, Bill McLean, and Amy Pacielli. And Glenn, good morning, and thanks for putting this together with the Tech Council.
Well, Garrett, always good to see you bright and early at 10 o'clock. And I just wanted to thank John and his continued support with Comcast to make these pipes pump as fast as they can and keep up with this good work. But I'm the chairman of the Tech Council. What we do there is we try and remain human, with all this technology-driven world, and gather ideas around issues that we are all challenged with at this point, which is just trying to kind of make it through this zombie apocalypse in one piece. In a two-dimensional world, we all miss the 3D, the random gatherings and meetings at the office. And how can we best cope with that? And as John said, many companies are pushing it back till next year, at some point next year, before they even think about going back. So the better we can manage this weirdness, the better off we'll be as human beings. And hopefully we can continue to do good work. But just before we kind of get the roundtable thing started, and I'll pass it off to Amy next, I just want to kind of take a little bit of an inventory of what, the working world was like for many pre-COVID. And if you look at our working lives, we worked like 90,000 hours in our lifetime. And yet, if you look at the satisfaction involved, 2/3 of those people that were working are terribly disengaged with what they do. We were commuting all around the place. I know in my previous life, I had to travel like 40 states. So I spent a lot of time in the air. I don't miss that at all. And now we've become much more efficient with our time and so on. So, this crisis, I don't want to waste a good crisis. We want to be talking today about how some of us have been able to bend the curve in terms of working more productively, getting to know each other on a more intimate sort of way, even though Zoom presents us challenges, and really how this working world can really benefit and improve what we do. So I'm really excited to have Jason Goldfarb, who's a fairly recent addition to the Tech Council. He'll share a lot of wisdom. Bill McLean, who's an old-time friend and a great futurist. And of course, Amy is here to talk about some of the challenges that she's had and not excluding those of being, bringing up kids at home as well. So we want to keep it kind of open and fluid and informal today, but I will just welcome Amy to the table, that maybe she can share a little insight, and we'll kick it off from there.
Hi, Glenn. Thank you. My name's Amy Pacielli, and I'm with Sphergen Technologies. Something we were talking about. So this panel really birthed out of some internal discussions that we've had amongst ourselves in the Tech Council, and we thought, hey, these resources and these ideas are things we should share with the broader audience. And so kind of my perspective on this, I am a mom with a young child who is now back in school full time. However, like totally a different outlook on the school year. So still not completely out of the woods just yet, but feeling very lucky. I'm fortunate to have an employer who gave me flexibility when my child had to go to completely online and remote learning for most of the spring, and also home with me for the summer. And so that's a huge shift. as far as people working from home, but also having your children at home with you was a huge adjustment for many, many people. And unfortunately, like a lot of people have had to take leave or shorten their hours or change jobs. And so I think it's really important that employers, especially in New Haven County, have the flexibility, because we're potentially headed back to that. Having that flexibility is a huge part of equity. So having the flexibility for working moms to work from home, work flexible hours, and make them a whole person. Don't just make it reductionary, like if your dog or your child's in the video. I actually kind of like that, because you get to really know that person you're working with. When I'm on clients, I have a good candy bribe system going, which I'm sure many moms have adopted by now. But yeah, thanks for including me on this panel, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
Thanks, Amy. Bill McLean, why don't you lead the future drive?
Thank you, Glenn. Good morning. So my comments to start this off, I've had two recent experiences that this future of work sort of touches on. One is this past weekend for 3 days, I was a part of a conference that normally meets annually. We were supposed to meet in Los Angeles, and we pivoted back in April or May and put everything online. And it had its own Zoom challenges, and people who couldn't turn on a computer all of a sudden were waltzing their way through Zoom meetings. And so it was good to see. And there were many ripple effects of this, and I always like to look beyond whatever is the shiny object. So in this case, maybe Zoom or working from home is the shiny object. It's the gee whiz thing that people talk about. But really where it impacts society and it impacts work is in the ripple effects of those shiny objects. And so ripple effect number one that we're still talking about, and we're going to talk about for the next year or two, is how many more people were able to come to the conference, since we pay for the travel and so on to the conference out of our own pocket. A trip for me to go out to LA for 4 days is in the neighborhood of $2,000, and if my wife came with me, well, it's more. We had in the past, we had 400, 500 people would come to this conference. We registered 2,800 people for this conference. And so going forward, if you follow those ripple effects and going forward, I think that just like working from home, when we get to some sort of post-COVID period, and I hate that term, I'm not sure what a post-COVID period is gonna, if there even will be a post-COVID period, but at any rate, we will take some of those conference Zoom lessons that we experienced this past weekend with us to the conference next year. And whether or not it's in person or a Zoom conference again, we certainly benefited from a lot of the things that we experienced this weekend. In another case, another example of ripple effects is working from home really is a microcosm of the changes in society. Because at home, what did home used to be? For us, home used to be a place where we grabbed something to eat, dropped off our laundry, and slept. Nowadays, we're spending very close to 24 hours a day in our homes. Not only us, but our spouse. My spouse works in another bedroom, and if we had kids here, they would be learning from home as well, or at least they did a lot of. There were a lot of people in that situation. So now home is a 24-hour-a-day thing where we have to coexist with people we barely saw before, and so the home now needs to have separate spaces. The home now, since we're not going to the ball game, we're not going to the theater, our entertainment here needs to be something more than it was before. We used to go to the gym. Now the home is the place where we do that. So when we look for our next home, we probably are going to have some very different criteria. It's going to have a yard because the kids have to get outside in a safe way. So there's a lot of ripple effects to actually working from home, and it changes a lot of things, downstream, and the way that we think about our home, each other, communications, and so on. And if you follow any of these ripple effect strings, the ripple effects of the ripple effects and so on, you follow those strings, eventually you will get to an ethics issue or a governance issue. And that's really what affects society. So I'm anxious to see what thoughts each of you have for the future of work, and what new skills we need to be acquiring, and how this is going to change the traffic on I-95, and how this is going to change the need for office buildings, how my relationship with my employer is going to keep changing as I now am having the air conditioning or the heat the whole day instead of having to turn it back. Are they going to compensate me for that? Those little things, big things. So I'm anxious to see what you all have to say. Thank you very much. I'll mute now.
Thanks, Bill. Jason, do you want to add some pieces to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to, except Bill kind of summarized most of what I was going to be saying.
He does that.
Yeah, well, that's the joys and benefits of going last, I suppose. Yeah, I'm very interested in, obviously, the technology of how we bring these solutions to the workers and provide the solutions for the employers to be able to maintain their work environment in a disparate situation like we find ourselves in. I find it very telling that John, working for a large technology company, they're not considering going back until July. And as that needle keeps moving farther and farther back, the paradigm is going to continue changing as companies decide that they really don't need people to work in a typical office environment anymore. That changes society in its entirety, really. Going to the points that Bill was making and back to the points that Amy was making about equity, there are huge swaths of the populace that cannot work from home. Forget about the fact that they may be essential workers or they're non-essential workers. Their jobs don't allow them to produce in an environment where they can be in a home instead of in their office, or if they're cleaners or they're food service in the hospitality business. And then how does that, the people who can, typically, more white collar workers, how do those workers deal with the fact that their entire home life is potentially in an upheaval? And we have, in my family, my wife is a professional, I'm a professional. I have two daughters, they're both in school currently as we speak. I only have, I think, 7 rooms in my whole house. So all 4 of us are in different spaces. And it looks really pretty with my window in the background, but if you could see what my coffee table looks like on a day-to-day basis, it's not as nice. So I'm very interested in the social aspects of this in addition to the technology, and seeing how we can provide that equity and justice for some people, in addition to bringing the systems to the table that allow them to continue to work.
Thanks, Jason. And of course, the other technology part is that our toolbox that we might have had at work 10 or 15 years ago doesn't really work so well in this environment where we're all working and doing asynchronous tasks in many different parts of the city, the state, the country, or the world for that matter. So kind of like Bill was saying, that geography has become less of an anchor as well. So our workforce is now expanded somewhat, which, and I know some of my team at Red Rock, we've been remote for 10 years, so they've already taken advantage of that. We've got people that live all over the country, and which is great from an employee's point of view, because then they can live their best life wherever that is, and they can continue to do asynchronous work, and we can all work remotely and it all works well. But as Jason was saying, I consider myself privileged to do that. There are many can't, and we should be mindful of that. But it's the technology stack that also needs to change to better enhance that. And we've moved into obviously all cloud-based apps like Teamwork and Slack and so on, where you can have live communication with people across many different platforms, not so much just email that is very much sort of silo-based communication. So all those things. So let's hear from, I'm excited to recognize quite a few people that have signed up today. So, and we've got some great talent in the audience too. So we'd love to hear from you as to what thoughts and challenges and hopes and dreams that you are thinking about at this point.
Glenn, were you tossing back to me? We want to welcome anyone's questions that you have out there. Feel free to jump on. You can put those in to the chat, and we will ask our distinguished panel that we have here. Feel free to jump into the conversation. Maybe I'll start it off with a question, Glenn, and for everyone, and love hearing everyone's experiences and how you think things will change and the different pieces that we're going to take from this. Are you seeing that people are adopting a hybrid kind of model of a little bit in the office, a little bit at home? It's difficult to judge, and it seems like by different industries, people are making different choices on what they plan to do. I see Amy shaking her head, so maybe I'll start with Amy.
Yeah, so this is actually something before this panel, I was kind of asking my coworkers what they thought about this. And it seems like it's kind of split by role. So in our company, we have people that are kind of customer facing like myself. And those people tend to be more outgoing. And for me, I've started being in the office 1 or 2 days a week now. Not for the full day, just coming in, doing stuff like this in the office if needed, and then being at home the rest of the time. For people who are on the technical back end and they're just coding at home, a lot of them don't want to come in the office. It's a risk. Why do I have to go and wear a mask? I get more done at home. It's more comfortable. So it's really based on their personality and the role, I think, more than just industry. And for smaller companies in New Haven, I think we'll start to see maybe 1 or 2 people in, or they'll have a schedule. This is definitely something that we're doing, and I'm seeing more people having sort of like a split role, and people can self-elect to come in on the days that they want.
Yeah, I can add to that too. My job brings me to client locations all over the state, and I tend to work from home as much as I can. But there's certain things, if you're setting up systems or working on servers, that you have to do physically in place. And when I go into these facilities, some have been shut down completely for months. Some of the protocols are so tight that I have to meet someone outside in order to get into the building. And in those cases, there's no one there. Other cases, it's mostly, to me, it seems that it's mostly management who is filling out the desks. But I was at one of our clients just yesterday, and in an area where there were maybe 70 people, there's 2 typically. So those people tend to be in the management position because they can distribute their services among their employees a lot easier, at least for them, when they're in the office. So that just seems to be what I'm seeing from my clients. Most of the people who are doing the in-office hybrid seem to be in that kind of management role.
I'm seeing a couple of comments, questions on the chat, talking about some opportunities where there's actually been improved communication from the team because you do these Zoom meetings. I think I see it cutting both ways. At the chamber, we instituted a weekly Zoom meeting. We'd always had an in-person meeting, but it allowed us to bring in some of the other team members who are at different locations, and so it really did build a better sense of team, I think, having the weekly Zoom meeting, and we still do that, and that's been great. I do miss out on some of the things that just occur, and maybe you pick up a piece of a conversation and then that keys off something else, or you're able to interject into something before it goes further down the road. I think that's one of the opportunities that's missed. I'll open that up to the panel, and maybe you, Bill, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Garrett, I had an interesting experience with a client of mine recently, and we were having weekly planning meetings with their planning team, and when the COVID hit, they shut everything down for a couple of months while they tried to get a hold of it in the plant. And I still remember, I'll never forget the first Zoom meeting we had after that. And we were trying to focus on what has been the impact of COVID on your business. And one of the first comments was, gee, I don't feel as though our communications has been as good. I used to get a lot of information around the water cooler. People would just drop by my office and so on, much to what you just said, Garrett. And as soon as that comment was made, there were 10 hands in the air virtually, and everybody wanted to expand on that and to add the perspective that communication they felt was better. And it was better because they had meetings because there was something that needed to be discussed, not simply because somebody stopped by. And that went back and forth for quite a while. And everybody was in agreement at the end of that discussion that, in fact, they not only their communication was better, but that had led to their teamwork, a much higher feeling of teamwork. And there were other feelings, emotions that were expressed, surprisingly, almost all positive.
I just want to call out Rippy. You made a really good comment in the Q&A, Rippy, and good to see you virtually as it may be. But just talking about most people in this Zoom room today kind of have a relationship of some sort. So we're existing in a virtual relationship underpinned by the fact that we have shaken hands at some point. But his proposition is an interesting one. It's like, well, what does new relationship building look like going forward? How much more difficult is it to pick up those nuances that we all talked about when we're looking at a two-dimensional representation, and how does that bear for people like Amy and Jason and myself in that respect that are looking for new clients in 2021, that where we are definitely compromised in our ability to have that very human interaction. Any thoughts on that?
So my first thought is, this is fairly new. This is a change. Of course, people don't like change. People don't like new things. It's not what I'm used to. Why didn't we go to Zoom years ago? It's because it was a change. It's because face-to-face is the best way to do it. So I guess my answer, Glenn, would be, this is a change. Let's get used to it. Let's keep revisiting this question. I think there's a lot of positives about this approach to work, or some sort of hybrid that the future. And I just think that a lot of the resistance is because it's change.
Yeah, kind of jumping off on that, I definitely relate to this point. I would say that it's it goes both ways. So we do have certain clients that are like doing a really large project with us. And if they want to meet us 6 feet apart, I will definitely do that. I totally get the need for actually seeing somebody in person to read them better, especially if it's someone who's just not comfortable. It's a totally new client. They don't know you at all. Um, on the other hand, like we've had more new clients this year than we ever have. And I think part of that is because people have a great need right now for the services we provide around technology. And so the need is there. Getting them to trust us during the projects, it's always that first project, that first building trust, delivering results. But on the relational level, I would totally agree it's a huge challenge. You have to be really structured and maybe even give them more time. That's what I've been doing, giving them more time since we can't meet in person sometimes. Going out of that extra mile, sending them an edible arrangement, something like that, and really like being more proactive seems to be working for me. But yeah, it's really hard. I find it hard with like new coworkers, onboarding them to a new company culture. I think that's another element of trust that's really challenging. Not just clients, but also internal.
And how about productivity? I mean, we always used to clock in, clock out, and just because you're there, you're at work. And now we're realizing that a lot of those 8 hours might be could be more effectively used. So productivity is going to be measured differently, not so much on time and attendance, the old school, but more about, so what did you produce today? How much? What was your contribution? So management, just getting back to Gavin Watson's comment, management has to make a big shift in terms of how they deliver work, how they manage the work cycle, and really what their expectations are. And a lot of it comes down to what's your company purpose. A lot of the bigger brands that are anchored in a very profound social purpose of some kind, where their workforce is aligned around that, and that becomes the North Star of everything that the organization does, are doing quite well in this kind of remote environment. But some of the sort of older school, sort of top-down management styles that are used to, micromanagement of some sort, are having a difficult time with this shift. Any comments on that?
Well, I think that's spot on, Glenn. And I think management needs to upskill and learn how to be more supportive, especially in this very trying times. People don't like to be remote and be away, and management needs to be able to support them, not be perhaps as critical, be more of a facilitator. And the management needs to learn new metrics for judging performance.
Yeah, and the other piece of that is as well, people used to work from 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 4. These days, the divisions between home and work have been so blurred. How do you make that determination as to, when do you stop working? When do you, take a break? Do you end up, doing a little bit of your kid's homework and then come back to it? Without that 9 to 5, I've been seeing that a lot more people are spending actually more time working during their day because they don't feel that they're being productive enough. That's adding a lot to the stress of, not only just COVID, but the ability of an end user or an employee to feel like they're doing something that has value, which I think is really, really important. I think that companies that really kind of focus on the well-being of their employees, they provide employee assistance programs, EAPs. They really focus on assisting their employees to provide, or actually promote the work that they're doing, I think is really, really important. Developing a sense of, instead of I work for you, more of that teamwork environment where you feel that you're a valued member and a contributor. Companies that provide that type of environment, I think, are the ones that are going to succeed. And the ones, like you were stating, that are really kind of top down, show up, punch your clock, do your job, go home. I think those are the ones that are really going to be suffering.
Jason, following up on that, how should employers think about employee well-being when they are remote? You can't pick up on always those signals that someone's dissatisfied with work, or they're just not happy with the current situation. How can employers kind of look under the cover and find that out?
That is a really good question. Not being an HR person, I would only be able to kind of spitball some of these things, but I would think that the management teams really need to start getting a lot more granular with their employees. They need to reach out and have one-on-ones with them. Typically management, in my opinion, just from what I've been seeing, really only gets involved when there are problems. So when somebody's not working well, or somebody brings an issue to the attention of HR because there's a conflict or something to that effect. But typically, if that's not the case, then they just kind of keep the ball rolling with making sure everybody gets paid and that vacation times are taken care of. But they're not really being proactive in reaching out to the employees to see if there's anything that the company can provide for them in terms of services, in terms of additional, let's say, stipends. I mean, a lot of people now are obviously working from home, and they're absorbing a lot of the costs that the employer used to be hosting. So the cost of infrastructure, the cost of technology, the physical floor space that an employee used to do their work in the office has now been shifted to their own home. That compensation can go a long way as well, but there has to be a discussion. So in my opinion, I would imagine that somebody in HR or in management would be best served by doing one-on-ones maybe on a monthly basis and just taking the temperature of how their employees are doing. Are they feeling okay? Make it a little bit more human and a little less impersonal.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Since we're the Tech Council, of course, I have to say I've seen amazing technology coming out around employee well-being. Really cool things from a variety of companies. I've seen, for example, I think I shared on LinkedIn this as well, but Teams is adding a virtual commute that you can do with your employees, where you get the whole team together at the end of the workday. And everybody kind of discusses how the day went, and maybe you do like a guided creative thinking exercise or a game. They have meditation activities if you're into that. I don't think that's something we would do. And then I've seen really neat things where HR, there's like an HR bot that like reminds HR what employees they haven't talked to recently.
Really?
And reminds managers, okay, it's like a bot to just keep track of if you've talked to your employees recently. In this time where we are completely overwhelmed, you can go like 2 weeks and realize, oh wait, I haven't talked to this one employee. It sounds insane. Maybe you've emailed with them, you've been in constant communication, but have you actually had a heart-to-heart with them where you've talked to them like a human, kind of like you're saying? So I've seen really cool stuff around this. Obviously in the Microsoft suite, we have a ton of products coming out around this. But employee wellness is going to be the key to retention. I've never seen so many people changing jobs in such a short amount of time. And I feel like part of that's the economy, but the other part of it is I can go work for anyone now. Why would I work for you? If it's all remote, geography is no longer a limitation. A lot of these big companies are going to stay remote for a long time. Why am I going to keep working for you? And I think it's going to be more the relationships and the culture that you build that allow employees to stay. It's more than just financial now.
And the other shout out I'll give to the Zoom room environment is that it gives people an equal tile of the environment. Whereas as before, the big voice might get up, or the head of the table might be taken over the room. Now there's a sort of a democracy involved in the Zoom room that I think is appealing, particularly for people that may not, that may get anxious or not enjoy presenting to big groups. So there's a kind of a leveler, a social leveler to that. And back to Amy's point now about the fact that I can see Amy's full face and I can read her triggers and so on. And if I was meeting her with masks on 6 feet apart, I couldn't do that. So you know, to be fair, there are some benefits that we need to fully, you know, explore while we have this to deal with. Anything else? Garrett, I love the way you mentioned checking in with your employees, because their needs have changed. Because like Jason was saying, their whole house is blown up, you know, particularly if with kids at home, homeschooling. I couldn't imagine that. I don't have that challenge, but it's considerable. So a big shout out to to people that are having to deal with that as an additional layer of stress. I think it's a huge thing. But health and wellness, as we going into the fall and the winter where I can't get outside and on my bike like I like to, I'm a little bit concerned about, you know, how I'm going to keep cool as we head into what the New England winter. Any kind of tips from the audience as to how to keep a level head and good mental health as we go into this season?
Well, you know, Glenn, on that point too, I mean, just on the school side, it's interesting how it's changed, at least for us. I know it varies by what town you're in and what your school district is doing, but, you know, it definitely for my wife and I, our lives improved in September when we could bring our 4-year-old back to full daycare. And, you know, we went to hybrid for our school system for our first grader. And then last week they went to full school. So thinking back to May when we were just trying to keep our heads above water, and even the summer with everyone home, it's, you know, it's been different variations, and it changes the way we work when we're here. Now, the challenge to that has been school lets out early, or, you know, we're not doing after school care because we're trying to limit cohorts, things like that. So in some ways, it's actually kept me home more often than before because I got to make the bus stop at 2 o'clock. But, you know, it's been interesting, I guess, just for everyone, how the situation just keeps continuing to evolve and change. Some things get better, some things become more restrictive.
So call out to Mike from PTA, left a comment in the chat. PTA is an ESOP, an employee-owned organization. And it's sort of, he's saying they're going to do a virtual meeting. But it just reminded me of the fact that some organizations are looking at their structure too and thinking, well, maybe there's a better organizational model to follow. An employee owned is certainly a great model to get greater engagement up and down the, you know, through the full team.
You know, I'll ask this question for everyone too. I almost wonder sometimes, are we communicating too much now? Because I look at my schedule, and there's definitely usually at least one day a week where it is back to back to back to back Zoom calls throughout the entire day. You know, because I don't have to worry about commute times now and getting to someone's office. So I can just, you know, stack them up like planes coming into a airport. But you know, that also then takes away from my time to actually get things done. And I find myself, you know, late at night still responding to my emails or trying to do all the follow-ups to those meetings. And I wonder where the day went. I almost wonder if I'm, you know, accepting too many meetings, or, you know, it's too easy almost sometimes, which is good. I'm glad I can communicate with so many people.
Yeah, two thoughts on that, Garrett. One is that there's benefit to commuting, as awful as that may sound. And one of them is on the commute in, I used to get my day in order, and I would have these internal conversations with myself. I'm not doing that anymore. And so it's one meeting after the other without alone time, forced alone time, commuting was. So we will have to come to terms with that and maybe carve out time to be alone by ourselves without the Zoom meetings. And the other thing that happened to me was I found that I was, as you say, I'm stacking them up like planes coming into a busy airport. I'm doing that less now. So in the beginning, you take it on, you say, oh, I got all this extra time, you take on extra. But over time, you begin to realize, I really need to do this. I need more of a work-life blend, what we used to call the balance. But it's really more of a blend, because right after this Zoom meeting, I'm going to go throw some laundry in and I'm going to then do the dishes. And so the life and work really overlap so much more now as I'm working from home.
Yeah, on a similar note, I would say it was like around June-ish, when my daughter went on summer break. I created my own commute. So now I wake up earlier every morning and I write down my goals for the day, and then I read fiction for half an hour and replace my commute with like reading fiction. It sounds so silly, but it gives me that mental gap between sleep and work. And I found that it actually improved my productivity a ton when I started doing that, because I had been rolling out of bed, chugging my coffee, jumping right into my emails every single morning. And I would kind of get in this fog by Friday. I don't know if that's happened to anybody else, but building in that sort of, I guess, commute for myself really, really helped me. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. And I recommend that for other people who are feeling that way.
Okay.
I do think that the extra hour of sleep that I can get, not having to bring my kids to school and worry about the commute on those days that I don't have to drive to Greenwich or Stanford is that's a big plus. I'm not going to say that I'm really enjoying the lock-in, but there are definitely a couple of little advantages. You just have to kind of seek them out, and enjoy them when you can. Um, but I like the idea of kind of a virtual commute to bring yourself to a different mental space to begin working for the day. That's a really great idea. A lot of people are just rolling out of bed and working in their pajamas. When we talked, I was telling my wife about the future of work conference that we were doing today, and I looked around and I said, I think the future of work is really just a messy house in pajamas most of the time. And it makes a lot of sense to do that. We were talking a little bit about how the house is set up, and some people are in a position where they can focus their space to give themselves a little bit of a physicality break between where they work and where they live. I don't know if everyone has that opportunity. I'm currently sitting on my couch in my living room, working off my coffee table. But what are you guys? Are you in like Glenn, you're pretty much always in that room. Bill, you've been in Hawaii since we've had these conversations, so I'm not really sure how that's working.
Yeah,
It's a good point, Jason, because I think it helps people to carve out a space if they can, knowing that this is sometimes a luxury item, but to try and make that emotional distinction between I'm at work and I'm at home. So definitely carving out a space and make it special if you can, make it dedicated, make it like this is not just for the next couple of weeks, because we know it could be a lot longer than that. So I know it's a luxury item, but I'd certainly think you should if you can. Sorry, Bill, what were you going to say?
No, I agree with what I was going to say, just about what you said. And I'm working off my desk in the corner of the living room. My wife works in the spare bedroom, and so we each carve out a space. And I think that that's important mentally. When I sit down here, I'm doing work. And when I stand up and go do the dishes or throw a load of laundry in, I'm kind of outside of my work bubble.
And Bill, are you feeling that you can make that distinction easily? Are you finding that transition between work, home is really effective for you? Or do you feel that when you're doing the dishes or the laundry, your mind is still in kind of a work environment? Last night it was 12:30 and I had signed on to a client's server to check to see what was going on, because I had a very busy day and it was something that needed to be accomplished. And I knew that we had this conference this morning. So, I mean, the concept of working at 12:30 at night for me is completely new. Typically we have the luxury, thankfully, of most of our clients are 8:30 to 5. So at 5 o'clock, I can mostly wash my hands of work and, be a dad and a husband and a, you know, homeowner and all the other things that happen. But since this has been going on, that really isn't the case. So I was just wondering how you guys, you know, just personally manage the fact that, you know, work can extend to 8, 9, 10, 12:30 at night.
I for whatever reason have always, when I'm doing the dishes, I'm thinking about the organization of this webinar this morning, or I'm thinking about the discussion with the client tomorrow afternoon. And so it's not really, you know, I'm at my desk from 9 to 5, and I'm cool with that. It works well with me, and um, you know, even when I'm down at the beach, which we live right on the beach, so that's every day. No palm trees, but as I'm walking, I will often be preparing the next presentation, or practicing it, or going through the roster at the client's place to see what needs need to be you know, upskilled, and so on. So I've always been cool with that.
Yeah.
Good point, though. It's about sort of delinking work and productivity, and that Jason
Right.
wouldn't be 12:30 at night and be very productive, and quite happily so. He's not in the office doing that. So it's a sort of delinking the those two worlds that I think is interesting, because you can actually decide when you work best, and that may not be between 9 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to agree with that. So we have an office in India. So I've always been on the earlier side of the workday. Typically, a lot of the staff there is offline by 11 a.m. So my workday usually starts a little bit earlier than most people. But I'm fortunate in many ways that I kind of have a flexibility with my work schedule. So if I'm on early with them, I try not to have calls after like 7 p.m. US time, just to like take a little mental gap. But it does happen, like 1 or 2 days a week, I'll have a really, really long day, like Jason's describing. I haven't found a way to prevent that. I just try to be mindful of it. And I've just been paying more attention to, you know, if I have a late night, take an actual dinner break, don't eat at my computer. Doing those readings in the morning, or taking some time. Actually taking lunch has been something that I've been trying to do as well. But yeah, I've noticed for me, my productivity does go down if I'm working these really long days, like my work spread out really long. So I really have to be careful with that. You know, the main thing for me, for my role, is to close sales and be productive. And, you know, I got to make sure that's happening, and that's my focus. So if I need to just say, sorry, I'm done for the day, then I have to do it.
What do you think is the, I guess what I'm really looking for is, I think everyone at this conference is probably a salaried employee, I would assume, or self-employed. But how do you think that switches over to people who are hourly and still working from home? Because the time clock does dictate what they get paid and compensated. And, you know, now all of a sudden it may be that their responsibility, it's now their responsibility to not only track their hours on a more effective basis, but to manage the fact that they need to shut off at a specific time because they can't track necessarily, they're not approved for overtime or of that nature. So how do you think that fits in?
So that's like our technicians and our developers are more like they're salary, but they have to track their hours they spend on projects for clients, similar to what you do. And yeah, it's a lot less flexible, honestly. And that's just how it is. I don't know what else to say on that, but it's on your clients. So if you're working with a customer and they're open during this time, then that's the time you have to work with them.
And just before I pass it back to Garrett to close up, because we're near the top of the hour, but I did just want to sort of acknowledge that those on the call are, you know, we're a privileged few that we can have this problem. It is one that a lot of people in the arts community, in the hospitality community, they don't have the luxury of this problem. So one of the things we can do, of course, is to actively support them because they don't have they have a different set of choices altogether. So hey, it's been a great conversation with you all, guys, as always. Thanks, Garrett. I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Glenn, and thank you to everyone. And I think I was just sitting here, I think the biggest takeaway if you're doing work from home is this self-awareness, awareness of when you're effective, when you're not, what works for you, what doesn't, because it's a lot of flexibility and gives you a lot of choice in your schedule. But with that, you just have to be aware of what is effective and allows you to get results. And I think that was the conversation we had here today and the conversation that I saw in the chat as well. So appreciate again all of our panelists and the Tech Council and Comcast Business. I do just want to let everyone know we continue to do events as we move forward, and our next big event is going to be the Big Connect, of which Glenn is the chair of our Expo Council, our committee rather. And so the Big Connect is going virtual this year and is going to be 4 days, November 16th through 19th. We'll be online. There's opportunities for virtual booths are available right now. We have a great lineup of speakers that we're going to be rolling out starting this week. So we hope everyone can join us. And just interesting about this conversation too, we're realizing people consume these products in different ways as well. So you see the big time slot there, 8:30 to 1. You don't have to be online for all those hours, but find the speakers that interest you and join in for those specific segments. And we hope to see you at the Big Connect. There'll be lots of opportunities to connect virtually as well. But thank you again, everyone. Great panel again, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well
Thanks a
done.
lot.
Thank you.